Welcome to the Art of Badassery, where I explore what it takes to live life on your own terms, break free from the status quo, and unleash your inner badass. Whether you're a rebel at heart or simply seeking inspiration to step outside your comfort zone, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and each week I dive into the stories, insights, and strategies of those who have mastered the art of badassery and are living life to the fullest. They smile when no one is looking. This episode is brought to you by Empowered Collaboration, increasing empowerment through motivation, collaboration, communication, and connection. Hey, fierce women, are you ready to break free from the monotony of everyday life and ignite your inner brilliance? Well, join me, your badass coach, and fellow coach, Jody Graham, for an empowering week at the Awaken Your Brilliance retreat in the breathtaking Mexican Riviera from January 16th to 23rd, 2025. Rejuvenate with sunrise meditations, empowering workshops, and soulful conversations. Your spouse or BFF can enjoy the nearby PGA golf course while you focus on growth. Early bird prices until June 15th, so reserve your spot now and awaken your brilliance. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. See you there. And now back to the show. Welcome to the Art of Badassery podcast. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman. And today I'm so excited. I have a remarkable guest joining me in the studio, Lin Green. Now, Lin's life has been a roller coaster ride right from the start. Raised by a tough Dominican mom with a lot of family secrets, she had to grow up fast to find her place. Now, despite facing some really tough times, Lin refused to let herself be a victim. Instead, she poured her energy into dreaming big and discovering a love of books and writing. Now, living in sunny Orlando, Florida, Lin's all about exploring and soaking up new experiences, but her real passion is helping others. It's something that she's been drawn to since she was a kid. So get ready, grab your favorite drink, and let's dive into Lin's incredible story of resilience and finding her purpose. Welcome to the show, Lin. Couldn't be more excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled and I can't wait to have this conversation with you.
You know what? Me too. I love a woman with purpose. Now, I got to be honest, my purpose has changed many times in the years. When I was younger, I just wanted to be a mom. Then I had kids. I'm like, I just want to survive being a mom. Now that my kids are all grown up, I'm like, I want to be an entrepreneur. But I'm curious about how your purpose came to being. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? I feel like we all kind of had that little inkling as young as I'd say maybe even 8, right? There's always something within our childhood that leads us to ultimately what our calling is or what our purpose is, I believe. I've had similar conversations with people too who have expressed the same thing. Like, yeah, it's like something about the number 8 is the magic number. But that's when you really start to notice the world around you. I remember vividly Oprah she had her talk show at the time, and my parents didn't understand. They understood very little English. They barely spoke any English. And so we would watch TV as we were learning the language. And Oprah was a place that I gravitated to. And I just loved the way she showed people within the guests that she had on that were doing all these amazing things or learning new things that they were experiencing, like I'll tell you specifically, I wrote about this in my book about how I wrote a research paper in elementary school on the topic of multiple personality disorders. And I imagine that the teacher looked at that paper and said, whoa, what is she watching and what is going on, basically. So that's when I noticed my love for people, my care for people. There was like something in that episode that really made me wonder the hurt that people experience. And that's where my love for wanting to help people came from. I feel like as early as that age, I started to realize it. And then into middle school is when I feel like that solidified for me.
Great reference to watching Oprah. Of course, I grew up watching Oprah as well, and she figured heavily in one of my stories. I don't think it's the one
Yeah.
I published, um, but going back to that, you're a young child, you're watching something on television that really resonates with you. Can you describe that feeling
Hmm.
of
Yes.
going, oh, like, how did that, what was that like?
Yeah. And I feel like, and if I'm really being honest, as we're talking, I'm thinking about those emotions, right? Um, I would say during that time is when I started to experience some really was traumatic incidents. I was molested as a child, and it was likely those experiences that had me a little uneasy, mentally, and maybe that's where that connection came from emotionally, and the interest that was piqued from that. And so that emotion, it was really raw. One of those things that you can remember as a kid when something really affects you, especially if it's been a negative experience.
Yeah. But can I just call out, and of course, the show's called The Art of Badassery, but I do want to call out that it's pretty awesome to recognize that even through a traumatic experience, you can see the light. Like you can see that there was something more.
Yes.
In other words, you are more than that experience.
Yes, and it's interesting you say that, because as I was thinking about talking to you today, I'm thinking, badass moments in my life, and I thought about those moments when I did experience that trauma, and those situations that happened to me. Um, my initial thought was, I am not going to be a victim. And maybe that victim word came from an Oprah show, because what did I know about being a victim at such a young age? But I remember saying to myself, I am not going to let whatever's going on with me, the reason why this keeps happening to me, to affect who I am going to become. And so I was decided very early on that I was going to be successful in whatever it was that I did.
I just got a hell yeah. I mean, really. Well, I'm not trying, no tongue in cheek. Seriously, not every child that is traumatized or even adult that's traumatized is able to make that decision. What do you think you were?
Why? I think part of the driving factor for me was because I had developed a perfectionist mentality even early on, because of the things that I was witnessing around me, the difficulties that my mother was having with my brother at the time, who was addicted to drugs, would often disappear, the stress that she was experiencing at the time. I remember saying I did not want to be in added stress. I wanted to be the best child I could possibly be. I wanted to make her proud and give her something to be happy about. So give her a little bit of joy, maybe in those moments, and things that I could provide as much as I could control at that age, which was really just my studies, right? My school. Um, my schooling. So I really focused on that. And that's a double-edged sword, and we can talk about that, because developing that mentality at just such a young age is such a great responsibility
Mhm.
for a kid. And when I took on the responsibility of making her happy, that was big. That was big.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest misunderstandings that we have as human beings is that that is our responsibility.
Hmm.
And children, especially, we think, oh, yeah, I'll do that. I can fix that. I can fix that. And of course, the challenge is that you can't. It doesn't matter how many great grades you have or whatever you do, what you do in the home. Your mom's story is her story, and you're not able to really affect that. But it leads me to my next thought, which is, when did you realize that mama had secrets?
Um, as early as during those times. So I would say between the ages of 6 and 12.
Okay.
I realized that my mom was holding a lot of things from us. And then, and this is in terms of, I believe she was doing so to protect us, because she didn't feel like the things that were happening were, of course, going to be any benefit for us to know. We were children. Um, and as a way to protect us from those things, I think she was withholding a lot. The negative effect to that is that withholding really affected our relationship and our ability to bond
Yeah.
as mother and daughter, because it became more like, okay, it's obvious that something's going on. We see it, we feel it, we can sense it. So why is no one talking about it? Why are we just carrying on like nothing is happening when we clearly things are changing. We're having to move, and we're having to pick up the pieces. And so that's about the time frame I'd say I've started to realize.
So, what do you think that understanding mommy's keeping something from us? What, if anything, did that make you? Like, how did that understanding affect your feelings for yourself?
Yeah. For myself as an individual, like
Yeah.
how that affected me. Um, it made me feel not worthy of receiving the information.
Mm.
It made me feel like maybe she thought I wasn't capable enough to receive it and handle the whatever it was, the news and the consequences. Um, and so I'd say for most of my life, I really did battle that, especially the worthiness, the value that comes from that, and in relation to building relationships as well, because a mother-daughter relationship is foundational to the core of who you are as a woman, and that did affect that a little bit.
Of course, how could it not? So, what have you learned about yourself now that you've written a book? And of course, I can see the book behind you and I know what your book is about. But what did you learn about yourself through the writing of that book?
I learned that number one, I'm a badass.
Oh,
I'd say, because I decided to take the power into my own hands and tell my story. Regardless of anyone's feelings or concerns, I felt like it was more for me to share my story to help how others can help others heal through the same thing. And so I wanted to do that, by way of writing my book. It's the best way that I know how. I express myself best in writing. Over the years, I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements, so I've gotten a little better at the speaking. But I also learned that being vulnerable was a little difficult for me, because I really had to dive deep into some of these experiences and relive them and recount them in a way that a reader would understand and feel where I'm coming from. So the vulnerability aspect of it, yeah, that was realization.
I'm sure. So, do you think that you're delving into this, having to be very vulnerable to go back and experience, did that in any way shed a light on your mom's behavior?
Yes, for sure. So the book was birthed out of me trying to find some understanding. I wanted to understand, there's that saying that says, our parents only did the best they could with what they had, or, with what they were capable of parenting. And so that really made me think about needing to dive deeper into where she came from, how did this all begin? How did she become, Miss Teo Linda, that's her name. Everyone calls her Linda. But how did she become this strong, independent, powerful hustler of a woman? So I really went deep into those beginnings for her to understand where it all, started to make its way into ultimately where we came around. I have three siblings and a bonus sibling who's my niece, and so I really wanted to understand how that happened.
But does the understand or did the understanding make a difference in how you, in either your relationship or how you
Yes,
viewed your mother as a mom now that you had that understanding?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. Because one, it made me realize why she is the way she is. And number two, it made me realize that it doesn't matter what I did to try to win her love and her approval. She's just, set and steadfast on those beliefs, because that is who she is. That's how she built herself, her personality. And so when I came to that understanding, I no longer took it personally, and now I see her with a level of compassion, and I can treat her with grace knowing that.
Well, I just want to say that that's really, really beautiful. And, when people ask me what I do for a living, I say I'm a life coach. A lot of people don't really know what I mean by that. But what you just said is is what we strive for, is giving ourselves permission to go and do the hard work, because it's not easy. You tell yourself you have to be very vulnerable to look at that, holding up a mirror. And we don't always
Yeah.
like what we see, even if even if we understand, we know it, we've lived it, we still don't want to look at it. But it's when
Mhm.
we do that that we have the ability to find grace and compassion for ourselves and for others. And
Yes.
compassionate self-forgiveness is one of the keys to the work I do with people, is teaching them
Mhm.
how to do that. What did mom think about this, all of this that you've done, and now that you've written a book, and her name, Mama's, on the front page?
Yes. Well, first she thought the book was solely about her.
Okay.
Um, and when she found out it wasn't, she kept giving me suggestions on how to make it more about her.
God, I
So
absolutely love
that
that.
is that is her personality. That's what I'm working with here. So I had to give her the breakdown. It's yes, it's about you at the core, but primarily it's about our relationship. And I know that's been a point of contention with us in the past, because I have tried, I've done my share of therapy myself, as I've tried to process a lot of these emotions that I've had through the years, and the feeling of, what more can I possibly do? I got to that place at one point, and we had the conversations, and they weren't always well received. There was a lot of defensiveness behind it, and so she missed the point at that time of the the conversation was more so how it's affecting me, and why it's important for you to hear me out on this. So when I told her I was writing this book, I explained to her how we've seen ourselves through a difficult time in our relationship, and I feel like other women experience the same thing as well. And why not help others heal through that relationship with the sharing of my story? So when she realized that, she was very understanding, and I've since had the book translated to Spanish. So she's currently reading through the Spanish, which is an entirely different experience. And it's exciting to see her go through these initial chapters that she's gone through so far, and see herself in them.
Then what a gift.
Thank you.
Really, no, seriously, what a gift. Because it's
Mhm.
hard enough. I, 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 I've experienced a little bit of that, but not I think to the same degree. But it is hard enough to do the inner work. Okay, let's be really honest here. Nobody
Absolutely.
wakes up one day and says, "Oh, I can't wait to go into my childhood and cry," and devastated and feel vulnerable and afraid. All of these things that we can feel. So it takes an incredible amount of courage to do that, also known as
Mhm.
badassery.
Mhm.
But the flip side of that is when we acknowledge the actual gift of this type of work, or even the recognition that we now may have for our parents or our siblings or whatever, whoever, that's a gift to them. I guess
Mhm.
not just a gift for ourselves; it's a gift to them. So, I just want to call that out. That is really badass, because this ain't easy, folks. Right? It ain't easy.
No, it's not. And there's one key thing that my book really describes. It's the act of breaking these generational cycles. And it was important for me because I can't even begin to imagine having that carry on to my child. And and I was a single mom. I like to say before I even knew I was a single mom, because I that was an interesting experience as it is, and I write about that in the book. But I wanted to break that.
Yeah.
And from the very beginning, even as a single parent, as hard as it was for me to get there, I was determined. I so much so I didn't even have a partner, and I got on birth control while I was still breastfeeding. And I said, no, I want to focus on this one child for as long as I possibly can, because this is my responsibility, and I need to make sure I have the best chance at creating a human being. That's as far as I took it. And he happens to be my only blessing till this day. So I'm very proud of that.
Well, I've always said, in fact, one of my stories in the book that I've written is about just how tough it is to be a mom, to be a good mom. It really is. It takes courage to be a mom. It's the hardest job in the world, I think, to be a
Mm-hmm.
mom. So I'm taking hats off to you on that. Where do you see? Okay, let me back up. When you first had the idea to write the book,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you thought was going to happen, has it matched now that the book is written, or have you gone into a slightly different trajectory, or does it feel different than what you were expecting?
No, and so I am still at the baby fresh aspect of that still, because my book officially releases May 14th. So what I have been doing thus far, the advanced copies that I have been able to hand out to people for feedback, the feedback I have gotten has been exactly what I wanted. And I don't know that I can take full credit for that, because I know it was only when my hands were on that keyboard, I knew it was coming from here and here. But before that, I know he was guiding me, yes, to exactly what it was I needed to share. And so a lot of the things in the book, especially as we talk about grief, has really, really touched people in the reading of the book, because I have a couple of experiences with losses within, throughout my years. But yes, I mean, I feel like so far, and we haven't officially launched, it's been amazing, that just the response that I've been getting from people. And that is really all I could ask for. My hope is that it reaches everyone in the way that I intended to.
I have a feeling it will. I'm just telling you, I got a feeling. And the reason I say that is that I truly believe that when the more authentic we can be,
Mhm.
the easier it is for our true purpose to come to light,
Mhm.
because we are listening, right? When we're ourselves, we're connected, we're listening. It takes a
Yes.
tremendous amount of courage to step up and agree to move
Mhm.
forward with that purpose. But I believe that when you have the calling, whatever it is, even if and it's not to say that everybody's only big purposes are worthwhile. If your purpose is to be the best garbage man in your lifetime, that's a great purpose. That's a purpose too. But when we
Mhm.
do it and we step into it, it's because it's needed.
Absolutely.
No, we know this is needed, and
Mhm.
so I'm sure that you will see that everybody that needs your book will hear your book.
Yeah.
So this podcast is going to drop after the book is released, but don't worry, guys. Check the show notes, because all of the ways that you can purchase this book and be in contact with Lin are going to be in the show notes. So, okay, you are you still single? Are you still single, Ma? I know you've got the one
No,
child.
I'm married 10 years this year. Yeah,
Congratulations. Okay,
thank you.
you've had some ups and downs. You discovered the love of writing. You decided to write this amazing book. Um, in a great relationship, married. You've got this. Your son is how old? I think he's in.
23 now.
What? You don't look like that
Yes.
23-year-old. What's going on?
Yes, just turned 23 April 1st.
Wow. What's next on the horizon for you? Is there another book in the works?
Absolutely. So I wanted to, after all these talks with my mom about how she wanted the book to be more about her, I wanted to give her a little bit of an opportunity to reveal some of those things that she was keeping, and the reasons why, and give other women the opportunity to do the same, anonymously or not. I think it's important to leave somewhat of a legacy, to your children, and I think that is the way that I'm wanting to approach this second book, which is the Revelation of Secrets, Mama Secrets. Not the working title, but pretty much the idea. And then I want to explore my relationship with my father, my biological father, who I've not had a relationship with pretty much all of my life. And so while I have the opportunity, and he's still living, I want to explore that. My goal is to be able to dive into the realities of a lot of what we face, what makes us who we are, and those little things that maybe didn't go so well in our lives, that if shared could help other people relate and help them get through those difficult moments. So I have a couple ideas in the works, but in the meantime, I'm also doing a lot of things within the community. I have a couple of groups that I'm a part of, and we're doing a lot of hope, inspiration, and healing work. So public speaking engagements. I'm busy.
You
I'm
sound
busy
busy.
beyond my full-time job.
Oh my goodness. Well, listen, I'm glad that you brought up going back to your mom's story, because one of the questions that I thought of earlier that I wanted to ask was, now that you are an adult, you've written a story, what do you think you would have liked to have happened instead of what did?
Mhm. Well, I certainly would have wanted to have the kind of relationship, mother daughter relationship, where she was more involved, more conversations, um, not just, I'm a mom, you have to go to school, get good grades, come back home, do your chores. Um, what's that saying? Speak only when spoken to, kind of understanding, and be a child and stay out of grown folks' business. You know, I wish that it would have been more interactive, where we would have had more of a relationship. And so we didn't have that much growing up. And a lot of it, I know, is because she was consumed with so many other worries and things that were going on. Um, we It's interesting, she's 78 years old now, and we talked a little bit about, our mother, where we are in the scope of, we're now caring for them,
Mhm.
when we talked previously, and that's where we are. And in that space, I am learning so much. When you talk about she didn't say much before, now she's saying it all. you know
So it's interesting because at the start of our conversation, we were talking about the title of your book and that your mom has secrets. I was wondering, is it that you wanted to know the secrets? But what you've just answered, it's not about knowing the secret. It's about still having a relationship. And I think that's really important to call out, because, you know, children just want to feel that they matter.
Mhm.
And it's a great recognition and understanding that your mom did the best she could. She was so focused on other challenges that she was going through that she was unable to give you that focus. But really, it's not the knowing of the secret. It's the, wow, I think this secret is stopping you from connecting with me,
Yes,
right? Not,
wholehearted.
yeah, a big call.
Hmm.
To your point, you were probably too young to understand, or to like, there are things that we don't want our children to know. I'm a mom,
Yeah.
but the hope is that those pressures, the pressures of motherhood or moving to a new country, or all of the pressures that we feel, that it not take away from our ability to connect with our loved ones, whether it's our children or our siblings or parents, because all we want in life is to feel that we're seen. I do believe that's we want to feel seen and heard and safe, right? I matter,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
I don't want to know about the problems with the bank. I just want to know that I matter, right?
Right. You can keep that. I don't even understand it, Mom.
I just
You
want,
know, let's just
yeah.
let's just talk about how school went today and how you're feeling today and what happened. And I think if we had had those conversations during those years when I experienced those the child molestation, and when I experienced those experiences with sexual abuse, that maybe it could have helped me.
Mm.
Maybe knowing those things would have shifted the way we carry it about in our day to day, and it would have made me feel a little bit more protected, maybe,
Mm.
if we had been able to have those conversations.
Well, I think,
um
yeah, to your point, when
mhm,
I think parents have a duty to raise our children in a way that they can communicate,
mhm,
in a way that they feel heard. If I say
mhm.
something, they're going to pay attention. So that when we have a tough time, when somebody's hurt us, we are not afraid to say it, or the act of sharing, you're so used to sharing with mom and dad and brothers and sisters that it never occurs to you not to share. Does that make sense?
Right.
So,
Yes.
but it's cyclical, right? Because if my mom didn't know how to do that, then who's going to teach me? So,
Mhm.
people talk about generational trauma, and I think some people may not really understand what we mean by that or what is meant by that. But really, it can be as simple as, hey, monkey see, monkey do. If monkey sees bad stuff and does bad stuff, then how am I going to learn anything different?
Right, right. Absolutely. And in some aspects, how it created who I became as a parent. My son, like I said, he's 23. He's a boy who doesn't like to communicate but so much. And so I try as best as I possibly can to get him to tell me more, if anything. So I feel like that relationship with my mom, and how what I experienced growing up really made me want to do something different, or at least be more mindful
Mhm.
of the fact that, especially nowadays, kids are experiencing a completely different life than what we've lived, and different pressures, different issues. And so we don't necessarily always understand it, but we should be open to discussing it, for sure.
I do believe that the greatest gift we can give anybody is the gift of our presence.
Absolutely.
So looking somebody in the eye and saying, hey,
Yes.
yeah, I'm here. Oh my gosh, what a
Hmm.
great story. Who are you? Wow.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
lots of lessons learned. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for your book to come out and for book two to come out. So if you were to give some advice to our listeners, three things that have really helped you to feel and act as a badass, what would they be?
Yeah, definitely. The foundation for me was spiritual practice.
Okay.
And I'm in listening to some of your previous podcasts, that it was so nice to hear a lot in everyone. That's a commonality. I feel like that's where it begins, right? Like, because that's where we renew ourselves, we renew our minds, we develop a growth mindset. And so that means, conquering the not so nice stuff to get to that badass position. So for sure, that is a major tip, being able to develop a spiritual practice and actually put that into place. Affirmations. It's amazing how we don't realize that the way we think sometimes, and the things that we say internally, affect the way that we act out within our lives. So I think it's important to speak positivity into ourselves, and a lot of that comes from that spiritual base as well. And just being able to have a good community around you of support that will remind you to give yourself grace, to forgive yourself and other people, for the things that maybe they can't control. And ultimately, setting boundaries, is important. Because I had to do that along the line, not just with my mother, but within my relationships as well. Setting boundaries was important. and recognizing that sometimes you're just not going to have a happy ending, but you need to be okay with where you are, and develop a life that's built around just refreshing yourself daily, and being your best self.
I love all of those points, all really, really great points. And I'm going to make you laugh when I tell you the story because you made me think of it. My mom is still living. She's 98, and she does have dementia, but we've been very close all of our lives. And
Mm.
I had a very bad breakup when I was a young adult. And I didn't want to marry this guy, but I was still pissed that he broke up with me. Like, I was like, I was having fun. And I was bemoaning to my mom about this. And she looked at me very seriously and she said, sweetheart, you know, just because you may not get married in this lifetime. And as soon as she said that, my hackles rose because I'm like, what? You should be, you can't say that to me. That's all I want is to be married. Like, how dare you? But she went on to say, but that doesn't mean you can't have an amazing life because you may not get married. I
Mm-hmm.
was devastated at first. And then 2 weeks later, I met my husband. No word of a
Oh,
lie. But I thought it took courage for her to tell me that. And
yeah.
and it actually, I feel like it took courage for me to hear it because it was
Mm-hmm.
almost as if because I thought about it a lot. I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean? What do you mean I could be happy without something I've dreamed about all my life? And I
Yes.
began to realize, yeah, maybe I don't need that. Like, and then, I met my husband and I've been happily married for 28 years. So mom,
Oh, what a wonderful
sometimes
thing.
they're funny. They come up with the best lines, but it
Yes.
it is important to recognize that the reality that sometimes things don't work out the way you want, but it doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
you can't be badass. It doesn't mean that you can't speak your truth. So
Mm-hmm.
just going back over your points, develop some kind of a spiritual practice, whether that is, Christian based, Catholic based, religious based or not. It's just a recognition that there's more out there, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a different plane that is in existence, right? Once you recognize that, to me, it's very freeing.
Oh,
But
yes.
look for ways to fill your cup and be happy. Look for
Mm-hmm.
community, ask for help, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I think is also what I heard in there because you deserve
Mm-hmm.
to be happy. We all deserve to be happy. Um,
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you know what? Without a doubt, you are a badass. Really looking forward to your book coming out. And I want to thank you again for spending time with me on my show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Truly appreciative, and thank you for all you're doing to spread just this message, and sharing other people's stories.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I love doing this podcast so much. It's kind of ridiculous. I laugh. Anyway, it's all good. Listeners, thank you for your patronage and for listening. And please give us some feedback on this episode. Check the show notes, as I've mentioned before. My name is Mahara. This has been the Art of Badassery. Tune in next week with a new guest. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another badass episode. Your support means the world to me. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, don't forget to like, share, and rate the episode on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback keeps the badassery flowing. And hey, if you're ready to unleash your inner badass and conquer whatever life throws your way, why not book a complimentary badass breakthrough session? Just click the link in the show notes to schedule your session, and let's kick some serious butt together. Until next time, stay fearless, stay fabulous, and of course, stay badass. This is Mahara signing off.